The wind screamed across the jagged rocks, carrying a biting chill that cut through the thin layer of fabric the human wore. Dust swirled in thick clouds, making every step a struggle. The landscape stretched endlessly, a broken world of blackened soil, twisted metal, and shattered alien structures. Most explorers never survived here. Most died alone, their screams lost to the void. Yet the human pressed forward, each movement careful, precise, driven by a stubborn will that refused to break. A sudden gust nearly toppled him, and he cursed under his breath. Keep moving, he muttered, voice raw from the dry air. His eyes scanned the horizon constantly, looking for shelter, for signs of life, for anything that could keep him alive. Every shadow seemed alive. Every distant movement could be a predator, or worse, a trap set by the planet itself. He crouched behind a fractured wall of stone, chest heaving, and listened. Silence stretched, almost suffocating, until a faint crack echoed from the rocks above. He froze. Slowly, deliberately, he raised a hand to signal caution, though no one else was there. A low growl rolled through the distance, something alien and massive. The human's pulse spiked, a thrill of fear mingling with exhilaration. He had survived storms, he had survived hunger, but this was different. This was life staring directly at him, testing his every move. He whispered to himself, "You're not like them. You won't end here." The words were meant to strengthen him, but they barely held the creeping dread at bay. His stomach growled, reminding him that he hadn't eaten in hours. He scanned the remains of a broken supply crate nearby, pulling out a half-crushed rations pack. The taste was bitter, but he swallowed it, forcing energy into his limbs. The predator, or whatever had been watching, made no sound now. It was studying him, patient and calculating. A sudden movement caught his eye. Small, darting shapes flitted across the jagged rocks. Scavenger creatures, fragile but fast, always hungry. One of them squealed sharply and vanished. He smiled briefly, an odd flicker of hope. If they can survive, so can I. But the thought was cut short by a deeper, heavier vibration under his feet. Something huge was moving nearby, and it wasn't scavengers. The human adjusted his grip on a makeshift spear, the tip jagged and sharp. He had crafted it from broken metal and bone, a crude weapon, yet one he trusted more than anything else in this hostile world. He crept forward, careful not to disturb the wind-blown dust that might betray his position. The vibration grew stronger, rhythmic, deliberate. It pulsed through the ground like the heartbeat of some colossal beast. He paused, breath shallow, every sense alert. Then he saw it, a massive shadow slipping between the broken towers of stone. Its shape was unfamiliar, too large to belong to any creature he had ever seen. Muscles rippled under dark scales. Eyes, bright and intelligent, glimmered for a brief moment in the dying light. "Not today," he whispered, more to himself than to the creature. He ducked behind the rubble, letting the shadow pass, listening to its heavy footsteps recede into the distance. Fear clawed at his chest, yet a strange exhilaration followed. Surviving here required more than strength. It required patience, cunning, and an unbreakable will. Hours passed. The wind changed, bringing hints of distant rain, or perhaps acid. He found a small overhang in a cliff face, a fragile shelter from the elements, and sank to his knees. Hands shaking, he traced the jagged carvings in the stone, signs left by those who had come before him, marks of desperation and warning. Some had etched names. Others had scratched warnings: "Do not stay. Do not wait." He pressed his fingers against the rough surface, absorbing a silent strength from the echoes of those who had fought and failed. A low growl made him freeze again. This time it was closer. He could hear the heavy breathing, the almost imperceptible movement of claws against stone. The predator had returned, circling, curious, testing his resolve. He gripped the spear tighter, every muscle coiled like a spring. His mind raced. Trap, escape, hide, every possibility at once. "Show yourself," he said quietly, voice steady despite the fear. The words hung in the air, challenging, defiant. The predator paused, its glowing eyes fixed on him. Then, with a soft snort, it vanished again, leaving only the tension and the pounding of his own heart. As night fell, the human huddled in his fragile shelter, wrapped in scraps of cloth, shivering but alive. Stars blinked coldly overhead, distant and indifferent. He felt the weight of isolation, the crushing knowledge that no one could reach him here. Yet he also felt a spark, a stubborn, unyielding fire. He had survived storms, hunger, and shadows larger than mountains. And he would survive this too. With a final glance at the dark horizon, he whispered, "I will not end here. Not like them. Not yet. And somewhere in the distance, eyes watched, calculating, aware. A predator had noticed him. And for the first time he realized, surviving wasn't just staying alive. Surviving meant being seen, being feared, and perhaps, in some strange way, being respected by the very dangers that should have ended him. The first rays of dim light barely cut through the thick dust that clung to the horizon. The human moved carefully, every step silent, but his senses screamed that he was not alone. The ground trembled beneath him, subtle at first, then stronger, a rhythm that mirrored a heartbeat he didn't want to hear. He froze, scanning the rocky terrain, his grip tightening on the jagged spear he carried. A deep growl rolled from a crevice ahead. His chest tightened and sweat ran down his neck despite the cold. Not today. I'm not your prey, he whispered, voice trembling slightly but firm. His eyes caught movement, a flash of sleek black scales slipping between rocks. The predator was enormous, faster than any human mind could fully track, muscles coiling with lethal precision. Its eyes burned with curiosity and hunger at the same time. The human crouched low, pressing against a boulder, heart hammering like a drum. He tried to recall every survival lesson he had learned, every instinct sharpened by isolation. He counted breaths, slowed them, listening. The predator's claws scraped the stone with an unnerving rhythm, a warning and a challenge. It had sensed him and now tested him, measuring, calculating. It lunged suddenly. A blur of motion, faster than he could dodge, and he barely rolled aside, scraping his arm against jagged rocks. Pain shot through him, a burning reminder that missteps here were deadly. He sprang to his feet, spear raised, eyes fixed on the beast. "Come on," he muttered, his voice raw, almost a dare. The predator circled, sniffing the air, muscles coiled like springs. Its tail lashed with power, carving grooves into the hard ground. Every instinct screamed to run, but the human stayed, moving carefully, baiting, watching for a weakness. Then it struck again, a flash of claws and teeth aimed to crush and tear. He dove to the side, letting the attack pass, and felt the dust sting his face. He countered with a sharp jab of the spear, striking the predator's flank. It roared in surprise and pain, a sound that shook the rocks around them. Pain shot through his shoulder, but adrenaline surged stronger. The human leapt, twisting, dodging another strike, and landed behind a jagged pillar. He caught his breath, feeling the raw thrill of being alive, terrified yet exhilarated. The predator hesitated, its glowing eyes flicking toward him with a strange awareness. It had met resistance, something it had not expected from any creature it had hunted. The human whispered under his breath, "You don't know who you're dealing with." He ran a hand along the pillar, finding loose stones, loose fragments of metal, anything to create advantage. He realized survival wasn't just evasion, it was outthinking the predator, turning its power against itself. With a sudden roar, the predator lunged again. The human rolled, twisting midair, slamming a rock into the creature's leg. It yelped, a sharp animal sound of surprise, then charged forward, enraged. He darted toward a narrow canyon, where the walls could trap the beast's massive body. Heart pounding, lungs burning, he raced, feeling the predator close behind, the air vibrating with each heavy step. "Keep moving," he gasped, almost shouting to himself. He dove into the canyon, the walls towering, jagged, echoing the predator's roar. The creature crashed behind him, claws tearing stone, teeth snapping inches from his back. Pain and fear coexisted in a raw, pure mixture, sharpening every nerve, every thought. The human slid under an overhang, turning swiftly, and jabbed his spear with all his strength. The point struck the predator's shoulder, piercing deep enough to make it howl. But instead of finishing the kill, the beast stumbled, shaking, and hesitated. Its eyes, bright and calculating, locked on him. The human froze too, realizing something profound. The predator recognized him not just as prey but as something dangerous, something unpredictable. For a tense moment, both stayed still, breathing hard, circling in silent understanding. Then the predator backed away slowly, sniffing the air, still wary but intrigued. The human lowered his spear, muscles trembling, chest heaving. He dared a shaky laugh. Not bad at all," he said quietly, almost to himself, almost to the creature. The predator vanished into the shadows, leaving only the echo of claws against stone. He slumped against the canyon wall, every nerve on fire, pain in his arm throbbing. He pressed a hand to his chest, feeling the rapid beat of life. "I survived, again," he muttered. But beneath the relief, a spark of realization burned. Surviving wasn't enough. Out here, it meant being clever, unpredictable, a force that even the deadliest predators had to respect. As night fell, the canyon swallowed the sun, shadows stretching long and dark. The human scavenged for water in a small rock pool, drinking cautiously, aware that the predator could return. He patched shallow wounds with torn cloth and whispered quietly, "You'll remember me. I'm not easy. I don't break." His eyes scanned the darkening horizon, alert and alive, mind sharp, heart pounding with a mix of fear, triumph, and curiosity about what other dangers lurked ahead. Somewhere beyond the canyon, in the silent darkness, something shifted. Something large, intelligent, and dangerous had taken note of the human. And for the first time he realized survival here was not just a fight, it was a test of respect, cunning, and sheer willpower. He had met the first predator and lived. The rest of this world had yet to understand who, or what, it was dealing with. The human moved cautiously through a narrow valley, the rocks on either side jagged and sharp. The air was thick, heavy with a strange metallic smell that made his stomach twist. He had survived storms, predators, and the barren wasteland, but something about this place made the hairs on his neck stand on end. Every step seemed to echo too loudly, yet the valley remained silent. Too silent. He paused, listening. Nothing. Then a faint whisper, like wind through broken glass, brushed past his ears. He spun, spear ready, eyes scanning the shadows. "Who's there?" he called, voice steady though his chest tightened. The wind replied, empty and hollow, carrying only the metallic scent closer. He crouched low, instinct screaming, and pressed against the rock. Then he noticed it, tiny shapes moving just beyond sight. Small, almost invisible, flickers at the edge of vision. He blinked and they vanished. His heart raced. They weren't animals he knew. They weren't predators. They were something else. Suddenly, a sharp pain stabbed his shoulder. He yelped and grabbed at it, but there was nothing. No teeth, no claws. Just a faint burning, spreading slowly. He looked at his arm. Nothing. Confusion tightened around his chest. He stumbled, blinking, and then the pain flared again, this time across his temple. The world shimmered, colors bending unnaturally. Shadows moved in impossible angles. The human fell to one knee, gripping his spear like a lifeline. What is this?" he whispered, voice trembling. Panic rose, claws of fear digging deep. His mind raced, trying to focus. Logic told him it wasn't physical. It wasn't a predator. It was mental, psychic, something that invaded his thoughts. The air seemed alive with it, crawling across every nerve. He shook his head violently, trying to clear the illusions, but the shadows danced again, twisting into forms that whispered and hissed. Faces appeared, none human, smiling with cruel curiosity, mouths opening and closing without sound. He swung his spear blindly, stabbing at empty air, sweat stinging his eyes. The shapes vanished, leaving only a ringing silence, heavier than before. "I've faced death, but this," he muttered, voice rough, almost breaking. "This is something else." He pushed himself to his feet, legs trembling, and forced his mind to focus. Survival was not just physical here. He needed awareness, concentration, and a will stronger than fear itself. He closed his eyes, counting, breathing, grounding himself in the reality he could touch, hear, and smell. Slowly the hallucinations receded, though the metallic scent lingered. He moved again, cautious, each step deliberate. The valley seemed endless, rocks rising higher, shadows deeper. Then, a faint ripple along the ground caught his attention. The earth vibrated subtly, too deliberate to be natural. His grip tightened on the spear. "Something's coming," he said quietly, teeth clenched. The first predator he had faced might have tested his strength. This tested his mind. Shapes shifted in the corners of his vision, twisting, crawling closer. He realized the creatures, if they could be called that, were invisible unless he forced focus, like glimpses of a nightmare in reflections or shadows. Every time he looked directly, they blurred. Every time he turned away, they closed in. Fear and adrenaline warred in his chest, threatening to shatter his composure. He forced himself to speak aloud, grounding in sound. "I am here. I am real. You cannot touch me." His voice echoed off the rocks, firm and defiant. The whispers intensified, almost mocking, but they could not break him. He had survived hunger, storms, and monsters. He could survive this. Then unexpectedly a voice, not in his head, not real but echoing, spoke clearly. Curious human. It was low, intelligent, chilling. He whipped around, spear ready. Nothing. Only rocks, only shadows. The human's heart thundered. "Show yourself," he demanded, muscles coiled, mind razor sharp. "I am not afraid of you." For a moment, the valley stilled. Then, with no warning, the ground beneath him shifted violently, throwing him off balance. A jagged rock rose like a blade, slicing through the air. He rolled aside, barely avoiding the strike. Every instinct screamed. This threat was smarter, faster, unseen. It was hunting differently than the predator before, playing with his mind, probing for weakness. He pressed his back to a wall, breathing hard, eyes darting. Pain and fear blended, yet determination burned brighter. He knew survival depended on thinking faster than the threat, moving before it predicted. The shapes returned, faint outlines now almost visible in the corner of his vision. He lunged, striking blindly with the spear. A screech, sudden and sharp, pierced the valley. Something hissed, retreated, and vanished. The air seemed to shiver with tension. Exhausted, he sank to the ground, chest heaving, sweat and dust coating his skin. "I see you. I know you're there. I will not fall," he whispered, trembling but resolute. A strange calm followed, as if the threat respected his will for now. The human realized this world tested more than muscle and courage. It tested mind, instinct, and spirit. Above, the sky darkened with swirling clouds, alien lightning flashing in the distance. The valley seemed alive, watching, waiting for the next move. The human rose, shaking but focused, spear in hand, eyes scanning every shadow. He had survived storms, predators, and isolation. Now he faced a threat that preyed on thought itself, and he would not give in. Somewhere, beyond the rocks, the hidden menace waited, aware that the human was unlike any creature it had encountered. He whispered to himself, voice steady, filled with unshakable determination, "You will learn. I'm not easy. I will survive. Always." And in that moment, the valley seemed to pulse with acknowledgement. The game had changed, but the human was ready. The human stepped into a vast clearing, the ground cracked and blackened as if fire had swept through. The wind carried a strange scent, smoke, blood, and something else, a primal warning that set every nerve on edge. He paused, scanning the horizon. Shadows moved in the distance, long and fluid. He froze. Not one but a pack of predators, massive, sleek, and silent, emerged from the rocks, their eyes glinting with hunger. His heart raced, muscles coiling instinctively. "Not today," he muttered, gripping his spear, every sense stretched to its limits. The predators spread around him, forming a circle, studying him with uncanny intelligence. Each step they took was precise, calculated. He had survived alone, but now he faced a pack, hunters that normally killed without hesitation. A low growl rumbled through the clearing. He crouched slightly, mind working, calculating escape routes, traps, anything that might keep him alive. The largest predator stepped forward, muscles rippling, tail lashing the ground. Its eyes met his, and he sensed curiosity, almost recognition. It tilted its head as if measuring the human's worth. "I'm not your prey," he said aloud, voice firm despite the pounding in his chest. "I'm not weak. You'll see." He shifted slowly, making sure his movements were confident, controlled. Fear was there, yes, but beneath it burned a fire, a spark of defiance that even the predators seemed to notice. One of the smaller predators lunged, testing him, claws scraping the dirt. He sidestepped, twisting the spear in a defensive arc, jabbing toward the beast. It stopped short, growling not from injury but from surprise. Another predator circled behind him, yet he sensed hesitation. They were learning, probing, realizing that he was not a mindless target. "I've survived storms, monsters, and the hidden," he whispered, almost to himself, sweat stinging his eyes. "And I won't fall to you either." His voice carried across the clearing, sharp and unwavering. For a moment, silence fell. The predators paused, their heads tilting, ears flicking, eyes narrowing. They sensed something, an unpredictability, a strength that went beyond mere survival instincts. Suddenly, one predator stepped closer, lowering itself slightly, almost like a bow of respect. The human's muscles tensed, spear ready. Yet he saw no attack, only observation. Slowly, cautiously, he lowered the weapon, watching every twitch of their tails, every flicker of movement. The air crackled with tension, a delicate balance between predator and prey, between threat and acknowledgement. "I can work with you, or against you," he said quietly, voice steady. "But I'm not your victim." The predators responded not with attack, but with measured steps, circling wider now, leaving space but keeping close. The human realized they were communicating silently, signals and cues that only they understood, yet they treated him as part of the same hunting dance. A sharp wind carried the scent of danger from the far side of the clearing. The human stiffened, instincts flaring. Another predator, larger than the rest, appeared on the ridge, a shadow moving with lethal grace. He realized the pack had gathered him here not just to hunt but to test, to assess. For the first time he felt something he had not in days, not fear alone, but respect creeping through the tension. "You want to see if I'm worthy?" he muttered, crouching slightly, spear ready, eyes scanning. "Then look closely. I won't break." His voice echoed against the rocks, steady, calm, but charged with raw determination. The predators paused, ears flicking, heads tilting in silent acknowledgement. One of the younger predators, smaller and leaner, stepped forward, lowering itself closer to the ground and growled softly. The human's muscles relaxed fractionally. He met its gaze, feeling a strange connection, an unspoken understanding that survival wasn't just about strength or speed, but cunning, courage, and will. "Not your enemy," he whispered, stepping slowly forward, measuring each motion. "But not weak either." The pack reacted almost imperceptibly, shifting, their eyes sharp and alert. They did not attack. They did not flee. They simply watched, learning, curious, aware that this human was unlike any prey they had ever encountered. As the sun sank lower, casting long, jagged shadows across the clearing, the human lowered his spear fully. Heart pounding, chest heaving, he understood something profound. The predators were not merely creatures to fear. They were observers, judges, even allies in a strange way, recognizing his mind, his courage, his ability to survive where others failed. For a fleeting moment, the human smiled, a rare, sharp smile of triumph mixed with tension. "You see me now," he said softly, "and you will remember." Around him, the pack shifted, restless but unaggressive, their respect unspoken but clear. He had faced the hunters and lived, but more than that, he had earned their attention. The wind carried distant echoes, strange and ominous, hinting at dangers yet unseen. The human felt the weight of the clearing, the pressure of the pack, and the thrill of recognition. Survival here was no longer just about escaping. It was about understanding, adapting, and commanding presence in a world that tested every instinct. He exhaled slowly, feeling the raw, electric pulse of life around him. The predators, the terrain, the ever-present danger, and knew one truth. He was no longer just a human alone. In the eyes of apex hunters, he had become a force to be reckoned with, a spark in the wild that could not be ignored. And somewhere, beyond the rocks and shadows, other watchers stirred, sensing the human's growing reputation. His survival had not gone unnoticed. The game had changed. The sky tore open with flashes of lightning, jagged streaks splitting the darkness, and rain hissed against the blackened ground. The human crouched on a ridge, spear clutched tightly, muscles tense, eyes scanning the chaos below. The storm was violent, but it wasn't the worst. The predators he had faced, and those he hadn't yet, were converging, drawn by the scent of survival, the aura of a creature they could not dominate. Below, the valley churned with movement. Shadows twisted into enormous shapes, claws raking stone and earth. He counted at least 5 apex predators, all massive, powerful, and intelligent. They circled, eyes glowing, stalking him, measuring his skill and his resolve. The human's heart hammered, but he did not falter. "I've survived worse. I will survive this," he whispered, voice barely audible over the roar of the storm. A huge predator lunged from the side, jaws snapping inches from his arm. He rolled forward, barely escaping, feeling the wind from the creature's strike. Pain flared in his shoulder, but adrenaline pushed it aside. He jabbed the spear blindly, striking its flank. It yelped and spun, teeth flashing in the dim light, but it did not retreat. It hesitated, studying him. Something about the human's movements, the unpredictable angles, the sheer will, gave it pause. Another predator joined, larger and darker, its tail smashing the ground with explosive force. He leapt backward, sliding down jagged rocks, and landed in a shallow pool of rainwater. Cold water soaked him, but he welcomed it. Every sense was alive, heightened by fear and focus. "You think I'm weak?" he yelled, voice carrying over the storm. "I am not yours to claim." The predators froze, almost as if they understood. The human moved deliberately, each step calculated, leading them into a narrow gorge where their size became a disadvantage. He ducked under low rock arches, twisted between boulders, jabbing, tripping, feinting, always moving. Every strike was precise, every dodge instinct. The predators roared, claws scraping stone, but he slipped past each attempt with impossible timing. Suddenly, a shadow fell across him, larger, faster, unlike any he had faced. Its roar shook the valley. He froze, recognizing instinctively that this was the alpha, the one that commanded the pack. Fear gripped him, sharp and raw, but he squared his shoulders, meeting its gaze. "I am not afraid of you," he said, voice trembling but defiant. "You will not break me." The alpha circled, powerful muscles rippling, eyes studying, judging. The human pivoted, spear ready, and lunged toward a narrow passage that would limit the predator's advantage. The alpha followed, its massive body constrained, yet it adapted instantly. The human's mind raced, each thought a plan, each movement a trap. Rocks loosened, jagged and sharp, tumbled with precise timing, slowing and injuring the predator without lethal strikes. Hours, or maybe minutes he could not tell, passed in a blur of rain, lightning and chaos. Every predator had tested him, clawed, bitten, stalked, and yet he survived. His clothes were torn, skin bruised, cuts bleeding, but his mind was sharp, instincts razor-edged. He realized something incredible. The predators were learning from him, adapting to him as he adapted to them. They were no longer purely hunters. They were students of his resilience. Breathing hard, he glanced around and shouted, "You want a fight? You will have respect, not prey." The alpha paused mid-lunge, head cocked, almost as if understanding. Then slowly the pack pulled back, circling wider, leaving him space but not retreating entirely. The human lowered his spear slightly, chest heaving, body trembling from exhaustion, fear and exhilaration. A jagged bolt of lightning illuminated the valley, and in that flash he saw the truth. The predators were not enemies anymore. They recognized his strength, his unpredictability, his mastery of survival. Somewhere deep in their instincts they acknowledged a force beyond mere animal, beyond instinct. A mind that could survive everything and still stand tall. The human laughed softly, a raw, triumphant sound wet with rain and sweat. "I am alive. I am here. And you know it." The pack shifted, tails flicking, heads tilting, watching. He had faced storms, monsters and hidden threats. He had faced a pack of apex predators intent on ending him. And now, against impossible odds, he had emerged not only unbroken but respected. The storm began to subside, rain tapering to mist, clouds breaking to reveal pale starlight. The human knelt briefly, touching the wet earth, feeling the pulse of the land, the echoes of predators, the rhythm of survival. He had become something more than a human struggling to live. He was a force, a spark of instinct and courage that no storm, no predator, no hidden menace could extinguish. And somewhere in the shadows, creatures far larger, far more dangerous than any he had yet seen, paused and watched. The human's legend was growing. Survival here was no longer just a fight. It was recognition, mastery, and presence. The apex of the wild had acknowledged him. He had become more than prey. He had become the master. Breathing in the cold night air, the human straightened, spear in hand, chest heaving. "This world is mine to walk," he whispered, voice steady, eyes sharp, mind alive with possibilities. The predators lingered at the edge, silent witnesses, some curious, some wary. But none dared challenge him further. For the first time he felt not just relief, but triumph, unbroken spirit burning like a wildfire in the heart of the wild.